Hey guys, this is the stuff for today. Um, this can be a Lather Games entry because I did manage to find this soap. Today is Small Business Appreciation Day. That's the theme, and specifically the small business of Maggard Razors. They do so much for the shaving community in addition to all the products they offer. Mostly the soaps that they offer are good quality, and so I don't hesitate to recommend their soap selection and their samples area to people. Generally, if it's not a good quality soap, it's just not going to be on their site. There are a few exceptions, but we do know that there are just a bunch of bad soaps out there, and you can see them on Amazon and eBay and that sort of thing. But Maggard is very different, and they are they host meetups, at least before COVID, and hopefully they'll start up after COVID is not as bad, where people can gather and just talk shave stuff and demos, whatever. I've not been to one of the Maggard meetups. I hope to be able to go someday. And Maggard does good things for us in terms of clearance and sales and things like that. Brad Maggard is the leader head guy. He started off, I think, sharpening straight razors and stuff was kind of his special niche that he really enjoyed. Anyway, it's grown quite a bit. It's in the Midwest. Somebody is in Adrian, Michigan, and that might be Maggard. I can't remember. I'm sure somebody in the comments will correct me, and when they do, I will add it to the description of the video. But they do have a brick and mortar location. But of course, these days, especially with COVID, most of their business is done online. And one cool thing they did for their community, the city, the little town that they're in, is that they took an old building and moved into it, and they've been renovating and restoring it to bring back some of that charm of the community instead of building some kind of new structure or staying outside the city limits. You know, they're trying to reinvigorate their downtown area. And so Maggard does put out soaps that are specifically Maggard Razors brand, and they have the leaf on them. And I've used leather and smoking leather, or something like tobacco and leather is one of them. I did a series where I did samples of a bunch of theirs because I was trying to find one that I really enjoyed, especially. London Barber Shop is one. There's one about tea and something like that. And none of them really jumped out at me. And so the smoke and leather might be the one I like the most. It's pretty strong, pretty masculine, kind of puts some people off. But they also did a licensing thing, where they joined up with Barrister and Mann for this one, Fougere Angelique. And they are the only distributors of this soap. They also did it with Declaration. I think it was Convergence, something like that. And so this and that other one from Declaration are the only two that you can use on today's theme other than a specifically Maggard labeled soap. Now, the Maggard soaps that are Maggard labeled, they're made by Through the Fire Finecraft, and a lady is there that does that, and it's a very, very good soap base. So it's no wonder they chose her to do their soaps. She does do her own stuff through her own name of Through the Fire Finecraft, which is kind of a mouthful, right? So Fougere Angelique is the soap for today. It fits in with the theme of supporting Maggard Razors. This is a horsehair brush from Zenith, and I'll be able to use a hardware point for the horsehair brush. This is extra soft. 507, I think, is the number for Zenith. I think P10 might be the American side of the world Zenith index number that the guy uses on the gentle shave. Hardware points also include 2 points for this guy because he's nickel plated and he's an open comb. He is a Fatip Grande, and he's the open comb, as you can see, and he is the Mark 1. He's that first version. He's easy for somebody like me to see who's seen it a lot because the top cap here is narrower by a little bit, and so you end up seeing more of the open comb. And when you're looking at the other one, the more current one that's been around for longer, it's easy to spot the difference because you know what you're looking for. The wonderful thing about Fatip razors, they might be plated in nickel or chrome, depending on which one you buy, but inside they're brass. And so we're talking lifetime quality for the price of many pot metal interior plated razors. All right. The only gripe that people have with the Fatips, generally speaking, is that every once in a while their quality control seems to lapse a little bit, and you might get one where I think the biggest issue here is where these parts, these posts, are not put in at the right angle, that kind of thing. The blade I'm using today is an Astra Superior Platinum. Fresh out of the envelope for the first time. Not something you see on my channel very much. Got a tickle in my throat. For a while, Astra did switch to laser engraving on their blades, but this is before that period. I heard word from some people that they have switched back to this kind of inking, printing on the blades, and so that's cool. Whatever they need to do. I did a test on the laser etched versus these kind that I have here, and pretty much identical. So either way they want to go is fine with me. With the Fatips, the blade can be misaligned, as with Edwin Jagger, Mercurs, all those other pot metal ones. And you do, what I do is I'll loosen it a little bit. Actually, that's it. Pretty much landed right in there. So it's not the only one in the world. The tolerances are just not as close as something like a Wolfman or Timeless not chiseled face, Charcoal Goods. A lot of those other makers out there are able to machine the razors at such a way where you never need to worry about blade alignment. Well, it's cost a whole lot less, and so that's the trade-off. With my scoop, I need my scoop. I didn't know if I was going to shave this weekend, and so what we're going to have to do, we're going to do the old thumbnail scoop method here. Just kind of scoop up approximately a 1/4 teaspoon. Let's wad that into a bowl and see where it ends up. That's probably enough to get the job done. When you use a bowl, you don't have to use as much soap. I'm in a bathroom now, so I could turn the fan on and smoke a pipe while I'm shaving. I'm still enjoying that. It's summertime here in North Carolina, and I'm not sitting out on the front porch like I used to. Sometimes what I'm doing is I do smoke in the car when I'm out on an errand. I don't inhale, and that's important to me. I don't do any kind of smoking that inhales, whether it's cigar or the pipe. Let's add just a little bit more soap. A little bit. I'm not inhaling, and there's been an FDA study that said that people who smoke just maybe 2 cigars a day have the same chances of getting cancer from, mouth cancer or whatever, lung cancer, as people who don't smoke at all. So how about that? Not really a cancer impactful hobby after all. When you're not inhaling, I guess, is maybe the big factor. And so that's why I don't mind doing it. If that hadn't been in place, I wouldn't have started. All right. So we've got everything pressed in there. Shook out most of the water in the horse brush. I am a big fan of this horse. It's not as soft as some of the Badgers that I have, but it's a little softer than some of the boars that I have. At least the young boars. They should get, of course, softer once they, fully split and that sort of thing. It's got a little bit, It's this nice combo between the boars and the badgers. He seems to have the tips seem to be soft like a badger, but then maybe the backbone is strong like boar. You know, something like that. It's kind of a hybrid experience, and I've really enjoyed it. I don't think I would like the horse brush in the regular percentages where it's more prickly. This is the extra soft, and I think maybe this is really the only horse that I would stick with. I have heard that the horse brushes, even the more prickly ones, if you work at them for a long time, the tips do split or change or something, and so they can become a brush that you enjoy using a lot more than you do in the very beginning stages of it. Of course, Barrister and Mann, and this is going to be, is this the glissant base? This would have been their first release of this soap. Did they release it in glissant or is it Excelsior? It should be one of those. Might be Excelsior. It's a nice scent, kind of a little bit of a clean soapy type stuff to it. But you can, there's that greenery in the background that is, and slight florals that you get with the Fougeres. It wasn't one I liked so much when I first tried it that I went out and bought a tub. But I enjoy shaving with it. I may not like it as much as many others, and so that's why you won't see me using it very much. I was kind of lucky today here at this place. I've already moved most of my soaps. There are a few categories that I keep here of soaps. I keep my tub of my older Stirling stuff here, my Barrister and Mann, Declaration Grooming, and then a couple of miscellaneous tubs. Noble Otter, Katie's Bubbles, Reef Point. I keep those here, and the rest of my soaps are over at the other place. And so when I looked at today's theme, I'm not planning this year like I have in the years past, and so I didn't bring a Maggard soap with me. I've got a Maggard at the other place. Oh, there's another Maggard soap called, I think, Northern Moss or something. That was okay. But it wasn't, just didn't bowl me over, I think. And so I thought maybe I would have to just put this in as a normal shave instead of a Lather Games shave this month. Nothing wrong with that, but I like to join the Lather Games when I can this year. But I thought, you know what? When I read that they specifically allowed this soap, I thought, hey, you know, I might have that sample here. And sure enough, I did. This does look a little bit more like Excelsior than the glissant. I'll go ahead and use it now. I don't think I'll add any more water to that. A little splash of water on my face. This soap was released as a pairing. Because I guess it was that was the pairing, was it this is really funny. It's the black one with like the red skull on it. Fougere aromatique. No, that doesn't sound right, but that might be what it is. I can't remember if that was the one that was released with this, kind of as the special release. Looks like maybe I have some extra water in the mix here. It's kind of staying thin, so, but if I add some more soap here, some more lather, that can help out. See, glissant wouldn't do this, so I'm pretty sure Excelsior is what the base is on this one. A few days of growth, but this is a good razor that should chop right through it easily. This is the Mark 1, like I told you, and it does not have the Fatip embossing or relief carving on either end there. And so that's something that is different from my Mark II versus the first version. And so if it doesn't have that, and then the top cap looks visibly narrower, then you've got the Mark 1, it seems. People say that and it is more aggressive because of that narrower top cap. And I am somebody who notices aggressive razors. I don't like overly aggressive razors. You can see I'm dripping. I've got a few shaving buddies who say if it ain't dripping, you're tripping. Well, we've got that going right now in spades. Going to take the kids out for Father's Day. This is Saturday, but I want to celebrate Father's Day today with them. Take them out to a sushi place. They like that. It's one of those fun ones where the sushi comes around in a conveyor belt. I never thought I would live in a city that had one of those. I'd seen it on TV. I'm so glad that we managed to get a chain here that does that. Maybe it's not a big chain, but there's a couple of those in the area. Easily, the razor moved through the hair. No tugging or anything like that. This Astra is a terrific blade in so many razors, and no exception today. It did a great job. A few days of growth without a problem. And you know what? I'm not going to rinse because I've got some water issues with this soap, with this lather. Maybe there was some water in the, maybe it was in my goatee actually, but it could have been in the brush that I didn't kind of mix it. I didn't integrate everything as well as I should have. And so by not rinsing my face, I can maximize the soap part of things and maybe help it to be a little more creamy. You don't need a lot, as you can see. That first pass you saw was not a thick pass of lather, but it did great. The razor moved easily, nice and slick. Oh, hey, you know what? I think it's Joshua who asked about a question, and now it might have been a couple months ago. I'm pretty sure it was at least a couple months ago. And I made a note because I wanted to explain it. I wanted to have one video to reference it. He asked about holding the razor. He asked about moving the razor across your face, because I've constantly mentioned that we want the razor to glide over the skin and not use like the length of a handle or any kind of pressure to push through the skin. I've made comments like that throughout my shaving videos, and he must have caught some of that. And so he asked, can you just help to describe what you're talking about here with that razor technique? And so I'm going to answer the question in terms of global razor technique. And even though I've said it many times in other videos, I don't really know which videos it was. I just kind of tend to interject these kind of things at a whim. And instead of looking through all the videos to find it, let's just make one right now and we'll kind of bookmark it as a good technique video. So what we're talking about here is with the razor. What is good razor technique? Well, everything's subjective in pretty much everything is subjective in shaving. Even the rule of getting a good shave is even subjective. You don't need to get a good shave if you don't want a good shave. I mean, even that part is subjective, but generally people want to get a close shave. Usually people want to get it as comfortable as possible, as reasonably possible. And so those are kind of some somewhat firm rules. And I'm going to describe to you the razor technique I use and that I encourage especially new guys to try to use. And you give it a shot. It's not anything radical or different, but I'm just going to explain it in more detail. Sometimes you'll see guys move the razor across their face. I'm not going to do it here. You can buff like this if you want. This is called buffing. Sometimes people buff and they will actually keep the razor on their skin. I don't really do that. I lift it up and lift it off. I'm able to go fast, and this is a key thing in good razor technique. I'm able to go fast because I've got a lot of experience. I've got that muscle memory that knows how to do it and do it right, even when I'm doing it fast. If you're a beginner, you don't have that muscle memory. Go slower. Develop that muscle memory through proper technique instead of doing it too quickly. Now, right here, I'm doing this kind of reverse part where this is more of a conventional hold on the razor, as you can see. But over here, I switch it up. And I still, here's one of the main principles here. I'm holding it loosely. I mean, look at what I'm doing here. The razor can still kind of move around. I'm gently, even if I'm holding it where I'm doing some kind of under grip like that, I'm just kind of cradling the razor. There's still a good bit of movement. Of course, you still want to hold it well enough to where it's safely managed. It's not going to slip and cut you or something like that. But hold it tight enough only to do that is my advice. Also, hold it close to the center of gravity in general. Now, when I'm doing this reverse stroke, I'm not near the center of gravity. This is a hollow handle, so the center of gravity is really up here close to the head right there. But when I do that reverse stroke, I have to change that policy. But I'm still keeping with that cradling, that gently let the razor rest right there. And so you generally don't see my skin move. You don't see like a divot in my skin as I'm moving the razor across. You don't see my skin tug usually. I've seen plenty of online shavers where you see their skin move because they're putting that much pressure on the razor. So cradle it gently if you're using strokes like that, but this kind of position here, I like to often hold. Now with this one, it's a little slippery right here, and so I do have a finger down here near the knurling or maybe at the bottom often, But a good knurling handle often will just let me hold it right here. And what happens, and here's the key of my technique. Bumps. Razor. Micro bumps on your face. You can see you've got kind of wrinkles and contours, and here's a big speed bump right here, a ridge because of that tendon. Okay, when you have those bumps on your face, if you hold your razor firmly to pretty much any degree, when you hit those bumps, the razor will press harder on those bumps than the other places around the bumps. Anytime your razor presses harder on an area, you're likely to get irritation or cuts or something like that. At the very least, irritation. Now, if you've got tough skin, this is not for you because you can shave any way you want to, right? I'm going to keep going here before the lather kind of gets a little too pasty. But what my point is, if you hold it at the center of gravity, if you hit a bump, then look at that. You can tell what it's doing by looking at the end of the handle right there. The razor moves over the bump instead of through the bump, instead of pressing down on the bump. And so and then also that helps you with your contours. If you're moving along, if you do long strokes like that over certain contours and areas, then if you keep that loose hold, then it helps you to compensate for an improper grip. You move like right here, you may not have to press too much, but then once you hit this concave area, that might be, unless you lift your elbow or twist or something like that, it might be easy to press in a little bit more when you hit the concave part. And so by keeping it loose and by feeling the razor kind of pivot across your skin like that, then the razor blade is riding across your skin at that optimum place where it's on your skin but not cutting into your skin, and it's just chopping those hairs off. That's the goal. We want the blade to cut the hairs and not the skin. And so a loose grip, as loose as possible while still remaining in safe control, is essential. And by keeping in the center of gravity or a loose hold somewhere else, then you're able to let the razor move along with the contours of your skin instead of like pushing through or applying extra pressure. You can also help by tugging bits of your skin. You'll usually see me when I shave this area, my head is tilted, and then sometimes my chin even goes up like this, and that enables a natural kind of tautness. If you've got extra loose skin, you can press a little bit to tighten that up. You don't want to overstretch your skin. All right, looking good. I'm going to splash just a little bit of water here. Skin feels good, no irritation. Get the last bit. I was right to go back and get a little bit of soap. Maybe I should have gotten more, but I am going to have enough to get the job done here. Anything else we need to cover in terms of the razor technique? If you get a long handle, there's nothing wrong with long handles as long as you don't use them to provide more grip. As long as you don't use them for leverage, because you don't want that leverage. I may be a big guy and I've got big hands, but this short little razor works great for me because I'm holding it at the balance point. I have had a couple of razors that I've enjoyed a longer handle, not to be able to grip it multiple places and have more leverage, but because it moved the balance point from here to maybe here. And so then I had a little bit more space between my grip and the razor, and so I enjoyed that. It was more of a ballast type scenario. And so if what I'm telling you is true, then you should be able to see my skin not really change much. As I move the razor across my skin. You shouldn't see some kind of ripple, some kind of furrow in general. Now, if you do have a soap that's not giving you the slickness you need, like this one is a little too wet at this point. I was using the dregs of it. Then that could cause your skin to move a little bit because you need to improve your lather. When I am going cross grain or against the grain, those short strokes like I'm doing now really serve me well, because if I do end up in an area where I am going too much against the grain and the razor and the blade and the angle I'm coming at is just not compatible, because I can't go against the grain like a lot of guys, then that short stroke will let me know that. And I can either change it, instead of maybe coming at it like this, maybe I could change the angle just a little bit to then be able to have a more comfortable and usually just as effective stroke. So that's mainly the key. Grip the razor in a place that's near the center of gravity so that it can float. Like the floating razor concept is what I'm basically espousing here. And especially if you have sensitive skin, something like this is going to be very beneficial for you, I believe. And just look for the great combination of razor and blade that happen to work best for your skin and lather scenario. One of the big, in terms of razor technique, pieces of advice that's thrown out there, and sometimes rightly so, is just let the weight of the razor do the work. Apply no pressure. Is that true? No, not really. In a sense, it's true, because when you're vertical, you don't really need to press into the skin at all. But when you're on the bottom parts, you obviously you can't let the weight of the razor do the work, because where does the weight of the razor want to go right now? It just wants to go into empty space and fall down. And so you have to lift it and provide some type of force. But I think it's good advice to noobs or inexperienced people who are just habitually applying more pressure. And by saying no pressure, it's making them think, wow, I just need to apply a lot less than I think. So in that sense, maybe it's helpful. So there's that. Anything else? So when I give you guys a little bit of visual aid, graphic illustration here. If you have this is the side view of the razor in rough form, and we have the base plate. Here's the top cap, of course the blade there. If you got positive exposure like that, where the blade is coming out farther past the top cap and the base plate, then you're going to be digging into the skin potentially. Some guys like that. Some guys like that positive exposure. Now, this, of course, seems pretty extreme. Generally, the positive exposure we're talking about is in much smaller increments, okay? But that's that positive exposure, and if that makes you happy, then great. Some guys mitigate this by taking their handle, lifting it away from the skin so that the top cap will touch at the same time the blade is touching, and it will kind of be a guide. And maybe the open comb or the base plate here, the leading edge there, will not even be touching the skin in general. Now, the perfect scenario that I've kind of been describing to you guys is this middle drawing here, where there's this line of your skin and the top cap is just touching it. The base plate here, the rounded edge right there at that point, is just touching it. And then the blade pretty much is touching it as well. And everything is in this great line. And depending on your pressure and things like that, if you do have a more mild razor that maybe has negative exposure, your pressure may need to be different. But in general, if I envision this happening in my brain, whether I've got a negative or positive exposure razor, in general, I'm trying to achieve this, I usually end up with a great scenario, even if maybe it's a negative or a positive exposure. Now, if it's really positive, then yeah, you don't want that balanced approach. You want something more like this up here where the top cap, you're riding that top cap, and then the blade is there, and the top cap is kind of your safety mechanism. But this is in general what I have in mind, trying to achieve a balanced touching and pressure between the base plate and the top cap. Now, like we talked about, it's subjective, and so it's up to you. Try it this way, try it the balanced way. If you don't like that, then raise that handle up, put a little bit more pressure on the top cap. You can also lower the handle closer to the face to put more pressure on the base plate there, the comb of the razor, the solid bar or the open comb, and see what you like the best. And that could definitely vary per razor and per blade, because we're talking microscopic kind of angles here, and the bevel that they put on the blade may just work differently for different razors at that point. And that's just why we get different experiences, different feels with different blades. I will say that there used to be some razors that were easily available. I think the Vanderhagen were some of them that they made a while back, and it wasn't a great design. It was a design that encouraged bad practice. It may have been because the blade was negative in terms of its exposure, and so you really had to maybe try to bear down hard to make it work. It was just told to me by many of the old guys who had used them that they would enable and encourage bad shaving technique. Okay, one way that could happen, at least in my imaginary brain, is if you press hard enough, then you create this divot in your skin near the razor. And maybe that divot is necessary for the top cap, the base plate, and the blade to all align right and give you the right shave that you want. Okay, and so I'm not saying that this is perfection and everybody needs to try to achieve this. In fact, if you have a razor where a little bit of pressure works for you, who's to say that's not wrong? Do that, enjoy it, get great shaves. But if you're experiencing a little bit of irritation, if you're not getting close enough shaves, then this balanced approach, I would encourage you to give it a try. Don't just give it a try once. I would encourage you maybe to give it at least a couple of weeks, maybe even a month, because it's a precision, nuanced technique, getting that angle right and everything. It can take a while to get it right. And so if you're bad at it, it may be because you're just bad at it and not that it's a bad technique. All right. So there we go. That's razor technique as I see it. My little 2 cents. I can tell you a couple of things. Also, that I have occasionally had these magical moments where you're relaxed and you're not really thinking about your technique too much. And I believe this happens after you've done a lot of work on your technique. After that muscle memory is kind of already in place. It doesn't really happen to people who are new. You're relaxed, you are just kind of shaving and really lightly, and then you get the end of the shave and you're like, holy cow, that area, this is my trouble spot. So that's why I'm referencing this area a lot. Holy wow, I've never gotten this area this close with this same razor and this same blade. So you know what that means? It was probably your technique. It just happened to be right. Okay? And so, and I've had that happen a few times. It's a really cool thing. And a lot of times I think, boy, I was just kind of moving kind of quickly, but I wasn't really focused on anything. My pressure was super light. I think that's one of the secrets. If you're not worried about it as much, your pressure can be lighter. And so when that blade is moving across your skin and the skin's not being flexed, then I think that helps your skin to be as close to the blade as it can be. Speaking of that, another thing you may want to try is cool water shaves or lukewarm water shaves instead of hot water shaves. As we know, heat, when it gets into your skin and many other things, it can cause it to puff up. The hot water can cause your skin to puff. Let's say this is a little puffy skin. Well, we've got a hair follicle right here. If the area around a hair follicle has puffed up due to the heat, even if it's slightly, then you're not able to get down into that and to cut that hair as low. And so it's been theorized that you may get closer shaves without using that hot water. When you use cool water or water that's not hot, the hairs can also have a tendency to not lay over, but be a little bit more firm. The skin around them is less relaxed, and so it can potentially keep it up. And the more vertical a hair is, the more likely you're going to be able to cut it closely down to the flush cut down to the skin there. And so if you're having especially if you're having irritation problems consistently, switch to cool water. I'm not talking refrigerator. I'm not talking add ice to it. Just whatever comes out of your cold water tap. Instead of hot, switch away from hot. And that can really help with soothing irritation. I enjoy that a lot. And I was reminded about this the other day. I had an aggressive razor that I was using, had just a little bit of light annoyance in this area, and that sometimes happens. But I just splashed some cool water on there, and bam, no need for any balms or anything like that. The cool water was so soothing. So that can potentially help your shaving situation and help your blade and razor angle to be as effective as possible. Another little something for you. We know this mix was a little bit wet today, but the stats are about 18 milliliters of water. Unfortunately, wasn't able to measure the soap, so I guess my stats are out the window this time. I like this Stirling BaM. I think it's pretty effective. I do like to put it on with a little bit of moisture on my face. It just spreads a little easier, so let's do that. This is Dunshire, which is a BaM inspired by Aqua di Gio. It's not a strong balm. It's maybe one of their weakest ones that I've tried. And so I almost think of it as unscented, or at the very least, it's so lightly scented that it kind of goes with everything. Just kind of a light scent that's neat. And so I ended up using it quite a bit because it's so versatile and just doesn't interfere. It doesn't conflict with a cologne that you might put on later, that sort of thing. Nice and effective, these Stirling balms. So one day they're going to change the packaging and all my balms are going to start to look old. So that was a very nice soap to use. It was enjoyable during the shave. If I was stuck with that on a trip and a tub of that was all that was available in a store somewhere, I'd have a great time shaving. Very nice. Really enjoyable. Definitely didn't offend in any way. It had some traditional shaving type scents as well and had some interest to it also. So very good. Very good soap. I think I covered about everything I wanted to with the razor technique. And so Joshua, hopefully that's good help to you in working on your own shaving technique. So some of the highlights are take your time, go slow. Now Joshua's not a noob, but for you guys out there who are new at this kind of shaving, go slow. Take your time. Especially when you're doing the curves, it's easy to go kind of fast during the flat points of your shaving, of your face contour, but especially when rounding any corners or right here, what people tend to do is, I took my razor apart to rinse it off, but you might have this angle when you're shaving right here, but then if you keep going down, see if I don't change the angle of the razor, now I'm at this angle, I'm at this area of the neck, and it's at a much, the blade angle is more steep. And so you do want to make sure you change the angle like that, or if you do like I do, little short strokes, then you can feel, you get this synergy between your hand and your brain and your skin, and you can feel when you're not cutting, that kind of thing. Also, if you keep that light technique that I'm talking about, either you're going to cut your hairs really well, generally speaking, or you're just not going to cut them at all. And so the worst case is you just go back over and hit it again. And then your technique will gradually mean that happens less and less, instead of the bad part being, well, either you cut it perfectly or you gouge yourself and get irritation. That's not what usually happens with what I'm describing to you guys. Either it gets cut really nicely or it just doesn't get cut very well, very, very much. And so then you can just hit it again with another pass or just go back over if you've got a good soap. This Fatip Mark I is regarded as more of an aggressive razor by a lot of people, and it's really quite strange because it didn't feel like an aggressive razor to me. It never does. I mean, sure, if I had bad technique, it would bite me. I'm pretty sure of that. But even from the beginning, I just didn't experience a lot of aggression from this. And I will see online guys who say that this is aggressive, and they'll be using a razor that I think is too aggressive, and they'll say, oh, I'm fine with this one, but that one is really aggressive. And I'm like, no way, that's not how I see it at all. You think that Timeless 95 is aggressive or not aggressive, but I think it is a little bit, or open comb, not the normal. But and so that's really kind of a strange thing. And so it's just one of those issues where it could be your technique, could be your skin, your soap, bunch of variables. This could be a razor that and the open comb, the normal, the Mark II, the current version that's out there. I think they both are subject to that variability of it might be an aggressive razor for you. It really also might not. So it's a wonderful value for your shaving dollar, and that is for certain. The Astra as well is that way. Enjoyed the horse brush again today. I love to put in more uses on this guy. He's all towel strop now. And I've seen reports online that he just doesn't tangle like a lot of the other horse brushes do. And I'm experiencing that same thing. I'm not needing to do any comb outs or anything like that, although I have done them. But I'm scrubbing. Some people say with horse brushes you need to stick to those painting motions instead of the circular type scrubbing motions. But I've been using it just like normal, never had a problem. So in terms of horse brushes, this is one I can I can definitely recommend. I know there's one viewer out there who enjoys when I use the horse. It's a favorite of his as well. So hope you enjoy that, man. I think we're good. I think that's good for today. Going to go out, celebrate with the kids, and all the best to you guys. It's awesome to have another shave go into the Lather games. Take care, everyone. Good night.